Well, today, really for this is our third week now that we've been looking at different people in the Christmas story. And so far we've been looking at different couples. We've seen Zechariah and Elizabeth, and we have seen Mary and Joseph. And as I said to the kids, angels have been involved in all of these stories. And I think we're going to continue to see angels involved in these stories. And so today we're focusing exclusively on the angels and their role. We've talked a little bit about this already. But angels are prominent in both the Old and the New Testament in our scriptures. They're everywhere. Now, usually we think of them in the Christmas story, and obviously they have a big role to play. But we're going to talk a little bit about what angels are, what they do, and what we can learn. So it's kind of one of those mysterious topics. We see them pop up here and there in the scripture. Sometimes we hear stories about people who can say that they've seen an angel, or there must have been an angel with them in a particular instance in their lives because they felt watched over or they felt protected from something that could have happened to them, and maybe they were protected from that. We have stories, and then of course we have TV shows, and the famous Touched by an Angel show, and many different books about angels. And so we have a lot of ideas about angels, and what we find is that in the Bible, angels do a number of different things. Now, obviously, angels announce good news, as I said to the kids. Not just at Christmas time, but in the Old Testament, we see that Abraham and Sarah, when they were going to give birth in their old age, an angel came to announce it. It's almost as though you're guaranteed an angelic visit if you're going to give birth over 70. It's just default. You've earned it. And so, so the angel appears to them. An angel appears to Gideon and tells him that he is going to fight the enemy with just a few men. And so sometimes an angel will come to give instruction or to guide somebody. Angels were involved as the Israelites were set free from slavery and moved towards Canaan. The angels were involved at different points in that story. And so sometimes they lead and guide either individuals or groups of people. Angels have a big role to play in the Bible. We see angels worshiping God. In the book of Revelation, we have an image of worship in one of the early chapters where angels are surrounding the throne of God, worshiping day and night. And so we see a lot of different functions that angels have. Now, as I mentioned before, usually when people see angels, they're scared. But not always. As we know in the story of Abraham and Sarah, when they are visited by, sometimes the language is a little unclear, and depending on the translation of the Bible you use, it will use the term a messenger from God, or messengers of the Lord. And sometimes it'll say an angel of the Lord, depending on what you're reading. But it's three men who come and visit them. And so this is interesting because here we don't have this scary type of thing that makes people fear, but instead you have three guys who are coming to visit Abraham and Sarah, and they show them hospitality. And so that's interesting, isn't it? It's not nearly as angelic, it's not nearly as majestic, and yet clearly the Bible is clear that these were not just regular people. And so sometimes angels can appear as looking pretty normal, almost like another person. That's why the writer of Hebrews writes that we should show hospitality and be kind to strangers, because we never know when we might be entertaining angels unaware. In other words, the idea that sometimes we don't know for sure. And we also know that God's presence is in every person anyway. And so angels show up in a number of ways, a number of different appearances in the scripture, and they look different depending on the appearance. But a lot of the time in the scripture it tells us nothing about what they look like. You have this wonderful scene in our scripture reading where the shepherds are working at night, and then this angel appears and proclaims that Jesus is born, and then this multitude of heavenly choir starts singing. And so we think of heavenly choir, we assume they're up in the sky, we don't know for sure. We have no idea what they look like. You would think that they would describe this, but they never do. Maybe it's indescribable. Maybe it's almost hard to even put into words what it's like. But we know that many angels were involved. It must have been pretty amazing. Sometimes we think that angels have halos or wings. That's not mentioned in the scripture, although in Revelation we have the image of an angel flying through the sky as it pronounces judgment. And so there's some thought. Sometimes we fill in the blanks with our imaginations and we say, well, maybe they have wings that allows them to fly. And so it's possible, we don't know. For whatever reason, whenever an angel appears in the Bible, it's a man. It's not to say there aren't female angels, but there are always men in the Bible for whatever reason. But what we know from Scripture, we don't know a lot, because it doesn't go into a lot of detail about angels. But we know some of what they do. We know some of how they approach people. We know that they are here for us to serve God and to help guide us. And so as we look at these different things that the angels do, I believe in angels. I believe that they can be active today, definitely. I also believe in a different type of angel, and that's the earthly variety of angel. There's the heavenly kind, then there's the earthly kind, just people. Now, I'm not talking that people are literally angels, but I'm saying that we can be like angels, like I mentioned to the kids. We can be like an angel in somebody's life. We can do that in many ways. Think about this. The angels had this great news to tell, the greatest news perhaps ever. And this was so good that when they announced it to the shepherds, one angel would not do. No, you have to have a choir behind them. You have to have this multitude. They have this awesome news, and they do a good job, right? In fact, perhaps if people had come to announce this, maybe it wouldn't have had the same effect. And as we think about this, though, we have the same good news, don't we? We have the same good news that the angels pronounced. So what are we doing with it? Are we pronouncing the good news too? Are we announcing good news to people in their lives when they're down, when they're discouraged, when they're stressed, when they're beaten down? Are we encouraging people? Are we building them up? As we think about how we speak and what we say, especially this time of the year, sharing the good news can become more natural. It can be easier to do. It can be natural any time of the year, but especially this time of the year. And the reason why is because, we usually always engage in small talk with people. And that surface level conversation. And for most of the people that we come across in our lives, it doesn't get beyond that surface level conversation. But this time of the year, small talk usually revolves around, what are you doing for the holiday? What are you going to do for Christmas? And usually we answer the question by saying, well, I'm going to go to, our family's going to get together over here, and we're going to celebrate, then we're going to go over here and celebrate. Or maybe for you, your family's coming over to your house and you're hosting, but we give the particulars about what we're doing. Maybe we can start by saying, well, I'm going to go to the Christmas Eve service at Harlan first at 7 o'clock, and then we're going to da-da-da-da, you can go on with your thought, but it just lays a seed there. Then maybe even you can say, well, I'm going to go to the Christmas Eve service at the Methodist Church at 7 o'clock. Are you going anywhere then? You'd be interested in going? Now that's not being annoying, and that's not pushing it at them, but you're just inviting. Maybe you know that they don't go anywhere. Maybe you know that they don't have any plans. Maybe you don't know, so you just ask. And then they can say no. They can say no, or, oh, well, I'm going over to Emmanuel Lutheran's Christmas Eve service at this time, and you say, oh, I see, okay. But you just give out that invitation. It doesn't have to be a big, grandiose thing. It's just, hey, you want to come? Are you going to anywhere? And it's a great time of the year to do that. And then, if they say yes, you give them your card, right? then they can have that time there for them. But yeah, it's a real simple way, unobtrusive way of inviting somebody. But there are many ways in which we can share good news with people. And sometimes, like I said, sharing good news does not have to be limited to talking about Jesus or talking about church. Sharing good news sometimes can be giving somebody an encouraging word when all they've heard is bad news all day. Sometimes sharing the good news can be reminding somebody that they're cared for, that they're loved. And some people don't hear that very often. So that's one way that we can be like an angel. Another way we can be like an angel is by blessing somebody. And of course, verbally we can bless people, but we can also bless people through our actions. And they don't have to be this big, grandiose things. They can be simple things. Pastor Adam Hamilton tells a story about a time when a congregant was struggling with stage 3 ovarian cancer, and she was in the hospital, and this is a big church, but 30 members of the choir went to her hospital room and sang some songs. Now, she wrote that was like, a group of angels had come, and that was a simple act, but something that really blessed her during that time. Now, you might have somebody in your life that needs blessing. Maybe you know that. Chances are there are a number of you who know somebody in your life who could use a blessing. And not only that, but you may know how to do it. And it doesn't have to be anything grandiose. Oftentimes we get the Christmas season mixed up and we only think about what we want for Christmas. But we have to remember it's not our birthday. It's Jesus' birthday. And if we're going to give Jesus a present, we have to know what's important to him. Right? When we give presents for somebody, we hopefully know what they like, what they're into, what's important to them, and then we can get them a good gift. But for Jesus, what we see in the Scriptures is that the most important thing to Jesus is people. The way he treated people in the Scriptures. He didn't cast anyone away. He included all people. He even crossed boundaries of what most people thought were okay to include, and he included them anyway. He included people who other people shunned. And he surrounded himself with the disciples, pouring himself into them, investing himself into them, and then ultimately died for the people of the world. So people are important to Jesus, and if that's so, then the best gift we can give Jesus for his birthday is to bless someone or many people, depending on what you can do. But blessing someone doesn't have to take a lot. It doesn't have to take a lot of time and money. It just needs to take some of your time and some of your love. And so I would encourage you to think about that this Christmas season. It's hard to believe that Christmas Eve is 2 weeks away, but it is. Get ready. I hope you're not stressed. But Christmas Eve is 2 weeks away. So as we get closer to it, I want you to think about how it is that you can be a blessing to somebody. And not just in vague terms, like, well, I'm going to be a blessing. But think about, okay, who is it that you can be a blessing to, and how can you be a blessing to them? And then go and do it. And you'll be given the best gift ever. And not only that, you'll feel good inside because you'll know that you're doing something that blesses someone else, that makes them a little bit lighter during this season. And a lot of people need that, especially this time of the year. A lot of people need that. So I would encourage you to think about that. How can I be an angel to somebody else this Christmas season? Amen.